Have you ever been in a place where you were experiencing the same moment as another person? You see two completely different things, experience them differently, observe different behaviors, feel a certain way in your body, and then get to an outcome you were hoping just to have a conversation and you feel like it failed. Well, if that's an experience that you've ever had or you ever think that you're going to have, today's episode's for you. It doesn't mean that your conversation failed. It just means that sometimes the real breakthrough in finally understanding the angle of the other person and where they were needs a little help. It just means that maybe you were looking at the situation in different ways and you need to hear how the other person experienced it. So welcome back to Simply 1%. If you haven't noticed, Gwendolyn is not here with me this week. It's just me. So I wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about for a long time and how we bring up a concern and the way that we bring it up and the purpose of bringing up a concern. What is this for? Do I want it just to be heard? Do I want to be right? Do I want to move the conversation forward? This isn't just a pattern that I've experienced in the last couple of weeks with clients. This is a situation that we deal with on the daily because we're all different people. There are dynamics in every area of our lives. At home, there's a dynamic. We're at work, there's a dynamic. You've probably been in a situation where you bring something up because you want to feel closer, more understood, or more connected, but within minutes, we're defending ourselves, you're arguing over what happened, you're debating who started it, you're bringing up something from the past, you're discussing the other person's tone, you're going completely off track from what you came into the conversation for, and you're pulling up evidence and receipts, and now the argument is about something that happened 7 years ago, or you even forgot where you started. So the original concern gets lost. This happens all the time. Nobody feels heard, you don't feel seen, and both of you leave the conversation more convinced that the other person simply just doesn't understand you. And that if they don't understand you, like, what are we doing? Right? So what we are doing is that we have a significant relationship here. We have a significant commitment here that we have to figure out what we're doing. We have to figure out how we're going to move through something that can be really uncomfortable or tough. This formula that I'm going to share with you is something that I use all the time with couples or families or companies that need help with communication. So the reason this came up this week is for a couple of different reasons. There's just been a theme of the way that people are communicating and the support that they need in order to move through something that could be really difficult and wanting to be more vulnerable. And how do I do that in a safe way? Also, just breaking down the reasons why we have tough conversations. Is it to move the relationship forward? Is it because I want to be right? Is it because I really just need to be heard? I actually don't need you to say anything. Is it just I want you to listen? I don't need you to solve my problem. So we need to frame the conversation sometimes or the discussion in a way that a person can listen. And sometimes we have to figure out a way to disarm our audience. I talk about audience as that person who's right in front of you and knowing who they are, knowing how much they mean to you, whatever the connection is, knowing who your audience is. Are they ready to receive? So this might be like a funny example, but this week I was following the conflict involving Bryson DeChambeau, I hope I said that correctly, and the 2-stroke penalty he received during the golf tournament. So for those of you who don't know, British Open, big debacle of this golfer who was seen supposedly stomping on the elements around where his golf ball was in order to get a better shot. At least that's how I understand it. Now, I don't really know much about golf. I'm just a therapist, but I'm going to tell you what I think anyway. Even though I'm not a golf official, what stood out to me was not simply whether the call was correct or not. Like that, okay. I mean, when it's official, right? But what interested me is how quickly everybody formed a complete opinion from incomplete information, from not having perspective that they needed. People saw one camera angle, they heard one account, they watched his reaction, and then they begin filling in the story with everything they could not possibly know. What he was thinking, why he did it, why wasn't he talking? Why didn't he share with us exactly what was going on? Was his silence an admission? Was the official being unfair? I don't know who it was, but they said, like, if this were these other two players, would we be having this conversation? And the answer was no. That brings up something as well. So everyone had an interpretation. This is a fascinating situation, I think, just in human behavior. And it just made like an obvious connection here to me in how we can see the situation and know nothing about it. I don't know anything about this player, Bryson. I don't. I know that he's considered to be eccentric or larger than life, or, has a different way of doing things within the golf community. Just hearing that, I'm like, oh, I like him. I don't have to see him. I love that. I love that profile of someone. Now, would that be a lens in which I would change my ruling or my idea about what happened? Not really. But admittedly, people said that if it were another person who did the same thing, they would not have ruled in the same way. I just find that fascinating. And again, it brings me back to what I'm talking about today, is not everyone has the same interpretation, because they're bringing in the different parts of the problem or the situation or the experience in the way they've experienced something before and how it made them feel, of the place in which they were standing and what they saw that other people may not have seen. So they're explaining it from their point of view, and the other person has another point of view. So neither one of you is wrong. It's just how you interpret the situation. So it just continued to make me think about like how we hear one sentence and decide what a person intended. We see a facial expression and we decide exactly what you're feeling. We receive a short text and read it in the harshest possible tone. Like, that's definitely what they meant. And by the way, as an aside, can we not have serious conversations over text? Can we just all agree to do that or not do that? When we hear somebody else's version of conflict and decide who is right before the other person has even entered the room, our brains just go to linking and wanting to make sense of something with all of this missing information. And it's out of a place of typically like protection or fear, or like we just want to feel better about something, right? And sometimes it also is just like at a sense of pride or belonging. I want to have an opinion on this because, I don't know, why not? I'll join the conversation. I love that. Join the conversation. And at the same time, sometimes joining a conversation means I'm just going to listen. You can still be in a conversation and not necessarily not necessarily add the information or opinions you have. The best way sometimes to join a conversation is to ask questions, is to be curious. So I know I'm talking about a lot of different ideas here, but let me bring it back to you. We've all been in some situation where we feel like we haven't been heard. So now it comes to the point of asking yourself, when you are faced with a situation that is your own and another person experienced it with you and you are on two different sides of it, how do you have a conversation? How do you approach it in a way where something can get accomplished? How do you start the conversation? Because it's really important for you to maybe have a solution. You want a solution at the end of this. Maybe it is just to be heard. You have to decide what you would like. You have to have an idea of what you would like to come out of the conversation. If it's just for you to be right, usually those conversations don't go really well. If it's to be heard, you can tell the person, I just really want you to listen. If it's that you just need to vent, you can actually ask for that too. You gotta set the scene sometimes. You have to give the other person involved an idea of the lens that you would like in that moment. So here is a formula that I use with my clients. It's something that over time I realized I just needed to come up with a formula that's really easy to remember and can apply to all situations. So the word I use is repair. It's not because like every relationship is broken or because every concern is a crisis. And honestly, like not everything has to be a crisis, even though I know we treat it like that sometimes. But because the purpose of conversation is to protect the possibility of connection rather than I got to win this case. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm coming with all these receipts. I want to convince you of something. If you are trying to convince your audience of something, just let them know that. I'm really here to try to convince you that this is the restaurant that we need to go to. Okay? So you got to let the person know why you're there. A lot of us are on guard in conversations that we didn't know were coming because, you know, for maybe historical reasons or personality or, you know, just not feeling like we're in a place to receive. So repair, it gives us 6 steps. The first letter R is for recognize. We need to begin by recognizing the person, the relationship, or something you genuinely understand about their position. So this might sound like, I know you care deeply for a family. I know this has been a stressful situation for you, or this has been a stressful situation for the whole team. I understand that you were trying to solve the problem quickly. So I'm already starting in a place that is either with a validation or with an affirmation. And hopefully this is an invitation. So a validation doesn't mean that I agree. I don't have to agree with you in these conversations in order for us to have a dialogue. We don't need to agree. On that unless that is your goal and you've said that from the beginning. I would like for you to agree with me on this. You can guess how that would go, but you can try it. I think you can understand that coming in hot is not necessarily the way to get anything done, right? So it communicates, I see your role. I understand that you're not trying to ruin my day. You're not trying to make me miserable. It's not like you don't want me to win. I understand your position here. I understand like why you could have this perspective. I get it. So starting with any recognition, validation, or affirmation before you go into it is one of the best ways to do it. The E is for explaining your concern. This is where you describe what happened as clearly and specifically as possible. And this is your account of it, right? This is not like putting it on somebody else of like, you never care what I think. You always these are where the nevers and the always typically come in. But this is not this situation. This is not saying like, I know that you're really selfish, but so I don't know if you're going to hear me. No. These are not for like character conclusions. This is for, you don't want to give anything for the other person to defend at this point. So a concern might sound something like this. When you made that decision without talking to me, I became concerned that we were not approaching this as partners. When you made that comment in front of everyone, I was concerned because it felt like something private had become public. My concern is that if you don't have the full story, then my character will be in question. So this is a specific concern that can be discussed, not like accusations or, nothing to create a defense for the other person. So you quickly follow this up with P, put the words to the emotion. So name what you felt. Name what you felt, not what you believe the other person made you feel, not what you think their motive was, your actual emotion. I felt embarrassed. I felt dismissed. I felt anxious, confused, disconnected, disappointed. I was really happy. And then that happened and it just took the wind right out of me. I was really excited to share this with you. And now I'm just sad. This matters because many of us communicate emotion through behavior instead of language. Like we become sarcastic instead of saying we're hurt, or we withdraw instead of saying we're overwhelmed, or we criticize instead of saying we're afraid. And so the reason why it's important to name a feeling or an emotion rather, is because many of us use the word like, I really feel that that situation happened this way. That's not a feeling. That's an observation. A feeling is actually attached to an emotion. So I really feel shocked and frustrated because this penalty significantly affects my place in the tournament. And I'm sad and I'm confused because when I heard you say that, it didn't make sense to me, right? Like, so then where that goes after that continues to help the person listen even more is the A, acknowledge your part. This is the ownership piece. And if there's any part that is most important, I believe that this is the most important. This might be the hardest part also of the entire formula. Ownership does not mean taking responsibility for everything. It's not about that. It doesn't mean like that we both contributed to this issue equally, or it doesn't mean blaming yourself for mistreatment. It means honestly identifying the part of the interaction that belongs to you. So it could look like maybe you waited until you were already furious before saying anything. So the way you tried to start a conversation before didn't go really well. And maybe that escalated things. So it got worse before it got better. So maybe that's your ownership. Maybe you made assumptions. I could say, maybe the way that I saw that is just from that angle or from just that side because I didn't have the rest of the information. So my concern, it may not even need to be a concern. And however, I'm glad that you're hearing me out. Maybe you expected someone to understand a need that you had never expressed. This happens quite often, I think. Like, well, they should just know, And I could say, I realized that I probably just wanted you to know in this moment that I hadn't really slept or had anything to eat at this point. And maybe that was the wrong time to bring this up because you know how I feel, you know how I get when I'm hangry. But I actually didn't communicate that to you. So that's on me. So it's not about this ownership piece is not about surrender. It's about showing that you are capable of considering information, recognizing your part, and like the way that you're considering somebody else's feelings or how they saw it, right? Like you still had a part in this, and there's always something that you can find. It could even be, even if you have been completely wronged, it could look like, I understand how this might be coming, how I could understand how this might feel really out of the blue or from left field, and how angry I am might be really shocking to you. I can understand that because I have not been able to have these conversations, and I really needed to have this 5 months ago. That shows ownership. So then the I is for invite. It's time to make your clear request. What do you want to invite this person to think or feel or see or hear or do? Many of us can definitely say what is wrong, and then we have nothing. It happens all the time, right? Like in meetings, like, well, we need to do this. This is what's not working. Okay, well, what do you want to do about it? What should we do about it? I know we've all been there. If you're going to come in with a concern, then you really need to have a clear request. You need to have something that you just need to come in with a clear request. It goes a lot better, especially for this repair. So if you would like something to happen, you need to say it in a way that somebody can hear. So you wouldn't say like, well, since you never listened to me, I would like for, no. Could you let me finish explaining before you respond? Instead of saying like, you're always on your phone and I really would like for you to just not be on your phone, and I think that you should be using your phone less. No, that's not it. The request happens like this. Could we put our phones away during dinner tonight? It's not, well, I do everything around here. Maybe you could just, at least take the garbage out. No. Could you take responsibility for school pickup on Tuesday this week? Would you be willing to come back and look at the scene of the crime and see and listen and see how I view the situation? I just want to know that I'm being heard for the way I experience the situation, because it's really important that I'm not seen as X, Y, and Z. A request is an invitation. So it's not a demand. It's not a demand. The other person still has the right to say no. Hopefully, they'll make another offer. They may ask for more time. They may explain that the situation is another way. And then you get to decide what to do with that information. So then you get to the last step, R. And it's the reinforcing of what just happened in the conversation. You end by appreciating the conversation, the effort, the person, or the relationship. I really appreciate that you took the time to listen. It meant a lot to me. I know this probably wasn't an easy conversation for you, because I'm not even going to say that. This wasn't really an easy conversation for me, and thank you for making it a little bit easier than I expected. And you have to say it with a tone that you really mean it, right? Because our tone can communicate something else than our words. And if that's the case, then you're still not being heard and seen the way you want to. So make sure that the way you deliver is with a tone that can be heard, and it's with compassion for the other person, that they didn't have all the information. They didn't know where you were coming from. And maybe that's a time to give them grace in how they responded or reacted to you, or why you felt uncomfortable. So an affirmation can be, I care about this relationship so much, which is why I wanted to bring this up. I really see lately how our relationship is not as connected as it used to be. And so this was my way of bringing up the concern. It wasn't just for me, it was of us, I hope. We can end with, I just appreciate you taking the time to hear my perspective. So, repair. The goal of a conversation is not to control the conclusion. It's to create enough awareness, sometimes understanding, honesty and clarity to know what needs to happen or what you would like to happen next. So it's not always to leave an agreement. It's not always to leave knowing that you were right. Sometimes that feels really good, and maybe there is a time and place for that. The purpose of using this framework is to create the best possible conditions for both people to speak honestly and with care and appreciation, and to listen openly, understand each other more accurately, and to determine what comes next. So, R, recognize, validate the person on their perspective, or give appreciation to the person or the people you're talking with. E, explain clearly, give your concern, explain your concern clearly. P, put words to the emotion. Say what you actually feel in emotion. A, acknowledge. Own that there's a part that belongs to you. I, invite. Make it clear. Make a clear, reasonable request. Create an invitation where there's a clear, reasonable request. And R, reinforce. Close with the appreciation for the other person, relationship, or the conversation. There's always something that you can appreciate. So, in the simplest terms, repair helps you say what needs to be said in a way that gives understanding, connection, and resolution the best possible chance. I hope that before you decide that someone doesn't care or doesn't understand or simply refuses to see your side, pause and remember, you may not be looking at the same moment from the same place. You've been at two completely different angles. It doesn't mean that you've experienced it incorrectly. It doesn't mean that your way is right. It means there's probably more information that either one of you needs in order to create a conclusion or a feeling about the situation. And that the purpose of using repair is to have a meaningful conversation. It's not to force a perspective or to control an outcome. It's not to say everything perfectly even. The goal is to just speak honestly, listen openly, and understand each other more accurately and determine what happens next. So recognize, explain, put words to the emotion, acknowledge the part that belongs to you, invite the other person into the next clear step, and reinforce that that person, the relationship, or the conversation matters to you and how it did. So your 1% practice this week is simple. You can choose one concern you've been avoiding. Write down repair. Write it all down before you even bring it to the person or to the group of people you been wanting to share your heart with, your mind with. And before you begin the conversation, ask yourself the question, what do I want them to get from what I have to say? And what am I willing to understand? Thank you for spending time with me today. Gwendolyn will be back next week, and you just get her one-on-one. And in 2 weeks, we'll be back together and continue to do what we always do. If this episode has meant something to you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And until next time, stay curious, keep gathering information, take the pause, and remember, you have options. And keep inviting change into your life 1% at a time.